Today on Alabama Unfiltered, we talk with Caleb Crosby, the president of Alabama Policy Institute, and we're going to walk through with him his legislative scorecard that API put out just recently. See what he thinks, hear the reactions from Montgomery, and see if this is anything you can use as you go to the voting booth next week. Stay tuned.
Welcome into Alabama Unfiltered. I am one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. I'm here with Amy Beth Shaver, Allison Sinclair. We'll introduce our guest momentarily. Don't forget, like I said, this is Alabama Unfiltered, powered by 1819 News, and you need to sign up for it. Make sure you get the podcast. You can find it at 1819news.com. You can find it over where the Apple podcasts are, Spotify, any place where you find your podcast. Check us out. Give us a thumbs up. Give us 5 stars. You know you can find it there. Ladies, how are y'all?
We're good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Are you going to introduce this strange person that's at our table?
No, this is your show. You've orchestrated this, and I want you to introduce and tell us what we're doing because we're getting ready for the primaries, right?
Gosh, thank goodness we're a week away. Like, raise your hand
commercials
if you're
can
ready
stop.
for this to be over.
No more commercials.
Can't come quickly enough. Now the runoffs may be worse. But I'm super excited because we have Caleb Crosby here, president of the Alabama Policy Institute.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And it's my understanding this is the first time you've been on a podcast in a while. And I don't know if you've been on, you didn't make it to Brian's podcast either, did you?
No, I've never made on any of the 18.
Really?
Okay.
They didn't think enough of you to bring you on to a
This is the first invite
podcast.
I've ever had.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for
I
being
appreciate
here.
it. I was
Okay.
shocked. I got invited.
I mean,
You
it's
know
a big
what?
deal.
Well,
It's a
Allison
big
was
deal.
determined. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm going to have Caleb on. It's going to be great.
Our
Whoa.
first text said, just think about it. And then the
Right.
next one was like, I have to do
You
it.
have to be here. What day?
I gave you 2
You
days
tried
to
too.
make
You were
it.
like, okay, I can only do it the day before y'all usually do it. So hopefully you will
No, I'm a
change your
genius
mind.
because I said, think about it. And by the time 2 days later went by, he thought it was his idea. And he was like, yeah.
I definitely want to be on.
Actually, I'm reading a book called Thank You for Arguing. And it's actually one of their ideas in there is to make people think it was their idea. It's genius. Well played, Sinclair.
Yeah.
Husbands
Well
try
played.
that for years and years and years.
No,
That's not a
only-
new idea. Who
only
outed that?
Wives can really pull that
Really?
off. I mean, would you not agree?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because
I
it
mean,
doesn't work very well at my
because
house.
we
I
like
try to
kids.
make it be her
Kids
idea.
do a good job.
Kids do a good job. Yeah, actually, they really do.
Yeah. They're
Wow.
master manipulators.
Which, speaking of manipulators,
Is that our transition?
this is our transition. How about that election?
Well, we're having Caleb on because recently the Alabama Policy Institute put out its 2022 legislative scorecard, which caused quite the upheaval in Montgomery. I don't know if
did?
you know that.
It did.
Have you heard?
May have gotten a few texts.
Were people bothered?
I mean, it is interesting, and we'll get there and we'll talk about it because some of the more conservative legislators that are like, I really like, that you can go to and count on for a solid filibuster of medical marijuana or some of these issues scored really low. This year was a little different because they had the platform, the policy platform, which I want you to talk about and kind of set that up because they did have, hey, this is what we're looking for. They basically had a cheat sheet and most all of them failed. So talk to us about how the scorecard started and then why you did the policy platform. And then we'll kind of get into the actual scorecard for this year.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Allison. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. But scorecard's something that since I've been involved in API for 11 years has always come up, and I've generally resisted it because never seen scorecards work all that well. I remember when Heritage first switched and did a scorecard, and you had these huge omnibus bills, and the legislature voted for what they thought 80% was good, and they got dinged because 20% was bad, and they're like, what do I do? And so it was something we finally came to the realization that just giving policy and research wasn't working, that there needed to be a mechanism, particularly as Republicans were dominating the state in all statewide elected offices. And every year I would get mail pieces like I am now saying I'm the most conservative, fiscal conservative, limited government, just throw down warrior.
Right.
And
Fight
the
for you
votes-
every day.
Yeah, and the votes then weren't being there. And it wasn't because we weren't giving them great policy ideas to execute on the principles they said they had. And so there had to be a mechanism, particularly as media then began to also not cover as aggressively as they did, that you would see the dynamic of they would tell their constituents I'm this way, They would vote different, and they'd give town halls and still say they were this way.
On the same day, by the way.
I
have seen
the
that.
same day, but
You don't
Yes.
say.
it takes a
I
whole
have seen them
different-
vote against a group of people and then go right out and tell them how they're fighting for them.
Yeah.
I've absolutely seen
Yep.
it.
So on ours, we laid out that we had very core principles with how we would do a scorecard. One of those is we would always say in advance what was going to be scored. Never a gotcha score, never looking back now with 2020 vision to say, boy, it was a bad idea now that what we know now. Want to be very respectful of each legislature to say, here's what we're scoring and why. And it wasn't just this is what we're scoring. It was, and here's a whole paper and analysis behind why we think this
And
should
this
be a
is the
vote, yes or
platform,
no.
kind of the impetus for
The
the
entire
platform.
platform did not get key voted. So a couple of
Okay.
other components of this was we weren't just going to key vote a whole bunch of stuff that was never going to happen. It had to be either specific legislation that was dropped, so reality that may come into play, or it was conveyed that this is coming and this was going to happen. So that you just didn't have all these key votes all over the place. So that was really the key piece. And even when this first came out 2 years ago, Todd Stacy noted that when he was still objective out there, and he was saying that it was different from others because they committed to always telling in advance what they're going to score.
No, that's important because I can remember scorecards through the years that would come back and you get a grade. And I will say most of the time I was in the top couple. I was very disappointed if I wasn't the most conservative, and whoever managed to get that spot would just give me grief for a whole year. But there would be these odd little votes like, and you were like, well, how did that get on the scorecard? And it was apparent that they had picked out the score. They looked at it and said, oh my gosh, somebody is really more conservative than that. So let's change this around and this wouldn't matter. But y'all basically said, here's a list of good policies. Mm-hmm. Most Alabamians would read those policies and say, yes, that's what we ought to be doing. And put it out there ahead of time and say, this is what we expect. And the interesting thing is, I think people miss it. Even talking about the scorecard, all of these special interest groups, whether it's the business council, an alpha, AEA, whoever, they have a sheet that has their expectations on it. Mm-hmm. Now, it might only be talked about in a secret meeting with the candidate, but they have expectations, and then they grade people just like it. It may not be a public scorecard, but they will say, hey, you're not really a friend to us because you didn't vote on these two.
You're not getting that money
so
next year.
what you're doing is out in the open, public, and they knew the scorecard was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because on this platform, the legislative policy platform, did you send this to every legislator? And so they received it, and basically it says it offers a reminder of where a conservative legislator or candidate should stand on important issues. They had a heads up. I mean, it's right here. You can find it at alabamapolicy.org. Mm-hmm. Budget and tax reform, one of the big keys in both the scorecard and this platform, there's a lot of budget, financial, fiscally responsible issues. And I think that's where and we'll get there, a lot of the legislators kind of fell through. Mm-hmm. School choice was on the platform, medical marijuana, gambling and lottery. So they have this, they're looking at this. So should they really be surprised when things don't go the way they think they should?
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't think that they were surprised about what was scored. I think just that no one's really focused in on the budgets in so long, because the budgets are what tanked most legislators, particularly the ones that had hundreds last year. Because, pretty much everybody voted for the budget. There was also that House bill, the anti-protest bill, I call it, in the House that every Republican House member voted for too, which we could talk about that one. But Allison, so the platform's there, but we also sent on January the 14th, an email went out to every legislator, and we did a press release announcing at that stage what the key votes were.
Okay.
Right.
And then as other things came about, like on the 24th, we added the grocery tax repeal as a key vote. Email goes to the legislature, has a different heading, different title, look and feel different so it doesn't get lost in your email. And then we also do a press release saying, hey, be aware,
Right.
this will be
Flashing
on the
sign.
scorecard. Yeah. And what we've communicated from the beginning is the time to be upset about the grade and the scorecard is if you disagree with how we scored something. So you thought we said vote no and you think it should be yes. That's what we want to have that debate. Or something should have been on there, it wasn't, or something, or vice versa. That's where we should have those debates. And so I didn't receive any feedback from anyone except for the budget but not till we key voted the supplemental from last year.
Right.
They said that was
The
the first
extra
time they'd seen
spending.
it.
The spending the extra money. Make sure you tell people what that is.
Beyond
Right,
extra
right.
over the top spending.
Right.
When that one was key voted, then they were like, "Oh wait, you're voting budget." So I'm like, yeah, we told you that in January.
Right.
But other than that, I didn't hear from anybody complaining, and so that's kind of where to me, that's where you have the robust debates. Who didn't have them.
It feels a little bit like the end of school, and the kid who didn't do their homework comes and is like, "Hey, can I get some extra credit?"
Right.
And the teacher's like, "It's May."
Right.
Yeah,
No.
you knew. You
No,
had
you
the
can't get
syllabus.
any extra credit. Right.
So why are you surprised?
Right. And
Yes,
and really,
that book report was there. That was scored. Yes, we said there was going to be a book report.
no, you
it
can't
was
do
on the
makeup.
syllabus or whatever they call them, and you don't get to make it up.
Right.
Yeah. But budgets, if you look through there and how things are graded and weighted, it's a couple of different things that you have such a stark difference for certain legislators from last year. One, the grocery tax didn't come about. That, if that would have been a vote, I think that would have separated a lot of people.
Right.
If they would have put a school choice bill on the floor and either side would have gotten a vote for that, that would have weighted. So
Right.
none of the pro vote yes bills, very minimum, few of those actually got opportunity to vote, which I would have thought in election year a lot of these would. That hurt. And then the budget, pieces were a big deal, especially with the supplemental. That's what tanked. And, it wasn't that all the ones who perform poorly here have always voted against big, ever increasing budgets, because this is the third record setting budget in a row. It's just that they're, for whatever reason, I've had a lot of these conversations with legislators, they believe that this is being good stewards. That
Spending every dime they can possibly get.
Not giving it back to the people.
Well, it's because they would say they're not taking more. They're just, they haven't really raised taxes outside of gas. And we could argue some of these others, but they would say they hadn't voted on anything maybe outside of gas, which only goes to roads and bridges. But that they got more because of their good stewardship.
Oh, they have been such
being
good
rewarded.
stewards. They're
Opposite day.
But this
They're
is
such good gardeners that they're just benefiting in the blessings of how good they were.
because
really.
Republicans have been good stewards and had good policy. It's creating this surplus to where now they can now take these funds and start solving real problems.
Okay.
Because I think
that's so
you
good.
were worried about deficits, I think, the entire time you were there.
Oh, we
right?
were
I mean, it was
always- we
like,
were
where
always
in
a
the
little bit
world are we going to be
behind,
able to pay for these expenses?
Right. And how are we ever going to have a rainy day fund, and what happens when the budget's turned down? And they're spending it. I guess they probably haven't refunded all those emergency accounts either. So when they have a downturn, I can hear them already. Proration. We're broke.
I remember that.
Oh, it is absolutely coming.
I told some other day in leadership we were meeting, he was talking about, well, we've socked this money away and we've socked this money away and we put this away. And I said, whoa. I said, people they're hurting right now.
Right.
Everything's more expensive. This is their money, not yours to sock away. I said, what did you understand is when you leave office, I want that place broke. I want just no money's anywhere. Why are we trying to fatten government, who's our potentially going to be our enemy at some point, if not already is, and reign tyranny? I want them broke. I don't want them having coffers
We used
full
to talk
of
all
money.
the time about starving the beast. The only way you can get the government to ever go back is you have to starve the beast.
Absolutely.
And they're not starving the beast. They're just and they won't be able to go backwards on anything.
Correct. Yeah. So we got Department of Transportation's apparently armed, and they're stockpiling piles of cash. I mean,
That feels so good.
yeah, right.
But that's where you hit this when you were talking about just a second ago. It's a whole paradigm shift that Montgomery needs, because they see it as their money, and it's not. It's the people's money.
Yep.
And they are called to be good stewards of it. Being a good steward is when inflation is rising faster than labor wages, you give it back. I mean, it's just, and you write in this letter in the front of the scorecard, you say over the past 4 years, Alabama's government grew by more than a third. That's insane.
36%. And put this in context. California over the same period, 30%. New York, 27%. Georgia, purple state, decreased by 2.9%. That's where, so last year we didn't score budgets. That we debated that internally. And the debate was, this is going to be such a shock and awe for legislators who've been kind of brainwashed this mentality that this is the government's money. We want to spend a whole year educating and trying to rewire. So we spent, we pulled articles back to 2003 where we were talking about surplus should be returned. So it's not new. So we even gave up another full year to say maybe we need to really soft load this. And so,
Well, I think y'all were supportive years ago when we were talking about the tax expenditure limitations.
yeah,
Colorado, I think, had one at that time, and we had a chance to pass it during Bob Riley's $1 billion tax increase years and years and years ago, and it was an amendment because I had it. Got shot down by the guy who eventually became Speaker of the House. He's preoccupied right now.
In jail?
Yes, that's what preoccupied means in the nice way.
I mean, he could be like
Well,
gardening
no,
or
but you
something.
made sure that everybody knew he was
In
in
prison.
jail.
Sorry, I just had to say that.
But still, I mean, it's throughout the years there were so many things that we said that we couldn't do supposedly because someone said we don't have the money. We don't have the money. We can't do school choice because we don't have the money. We can't do it because it'll take money away from the classroom. And now that we're just rolling in cash, growing the size of the state budget by leaps and bounds, they're not funding the things that we said we would do if we had money. And the frustration level. All right, and then another thing from the past, and I don't know if you remember, Caleb, or not. Someone had done a study about the size and number of state employees and how much was spent. And years ago, Alabama was spending like $1 billion more than our surrounding sister states when everything was normalized for how many state employees there were and all this kind of stuff. So we were already spending way more as a state government based on per capita than everyone else.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who did that. And I bet now it may be $2 billion a year more.
Well, it
per
seems
capita.
like small government, less government, reducing the size of government. I thought it was a pillar of the conservative platform to reduce government. So we have this overwhelmingly majority of Republican conservative legislators, and they are clearly doing the opposite. And one thing before we get into this scorecard, I want to talk about is the you have a little disclaimer after your letter talking about lack of leadership or terrible leadership. They led us, but they led us in the wrong direction, and how a lot of these really good bills never even made it up for a vote. What is going on in Montgomery? Because if you go through and you look up Matt McCutcheon and you look up Klaus and you look up Ledbetter and you look up some of these Jabbo, you look up some of these senators and these leaders, they're like the bottom of the rung. And they're supposed to be leading like the reddest of the reddest states. What's going on? It's bizarre. Does anyone have a theory?
I mean, I think to go along with that, the other question is, when did we shift into becoming a big government, pretending to be Republicans, pretending to care about fiscal responsibility? Like, when did this happen?
It seems like it happened when the Republicans took over.
Do you think
it was probably 2 years, maybe 3 years, probably 2013. We probably had 2 good years of decent reform after Republicans took over. And then as we got ready for that next election in 2014, everybody started looking around going, hey, who's going to help me get elected? What am I going to do? Oh, the lobbyists are going to help.
So is that the motivator to make sure you're back the next election cycle?
I mean, you don't hear any
money?
special interest out of Montgomery complaining about any of this.
Is everybody compromised, blackmailed?
I wouldn't say they're compromised and blackmailed. It is just an easier row to hoe. It is easier to be reelected if Montgomery is happy with you.
So the people don't matter?
I didn't say people don't matter.
But I mean, to them.
But the reality is people don't matter.
Well, it felt like almost the leadership that was supposed to be conservative, fighting conservative values and issues, was really against us. Yeah. I mean, there's some really good bills that could have come up, and you talk about this, that were never even brought up in committee. But
go back and find out how people became leadership. Lobbyists are involved in those races. Lobbyists are working for candidates.
How does that work?
That's how it works. Lobbyists are involved. They help. They go, hey, you're one of our guys. You're friends. We really think so and so ought to be speaker. We really think so and so ought to get this. Okay, that's who y'all are for? Yeah, that's who we're for. So they're working it in the background all the time. So you end up with people who care more about what special interest wants, the big people, the good old boys, than they are what people want. And it's the greatest example is if you're trying to do what the people want, trying to do these things, you will end up with this group, and this group all against you, all willing to spend big money against you in a campaign. And then you go home and you try to raise money and you get 10 people give you $100. So now you're at $1,000 and that won't buy.
So the good guys
They won't
can't
buy
win.
two TV ads on a major news network. So we're kind of always behind because people don't keep up. But it's these kinds of things. It's this scorecard. This is the kind of thing that will help regular people keep up and actually.
Because it holds them accountable?
Yes, and it requires them to do something that they've promised that they're probably campaigning on. But without these things, all we have to make up our minds about when we're picking candidates is how good are their commercials, and do they seem really folksy, and do they have a picture with in front of a church with a tractor and a dog and a gun and.
Bible.
So do
That's it.
legislators
Bible.
pay
Well,
attention
that's what I
to
did
this
the
kind of
church.
stuff?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did the church
But if
for.
you're in front of a church with a Bible,
Then you're
and a gun,
really, really,
even
really
better.
solid.
Ew.
Really solid.
That makes me nervous.
But that
I know.
I think that's the key, and I think Caleb would agree that most legislators are driven, and I think I've said this on the show, they're driven more by fear than they are about philosophy. So if the API scorecard begins to make people fearful because the public is looking at it and they're going and they're saying, "Hey, look, that's why are you not for that? That's that makes perfect sense." So I even read the white paper. That makes perfect sense. How did you vote no? That's the kind of thing that causes legislators to change direction.
oh my word.
You're frustrated yet?
No, I'm trying to comprehend. So let me ask you this. You guys have done these scorecards for how many years again?
This is only the second
year.
And both scores in there with a lifetime.
Because before we would have the notebook, and I was an intern at API when I was a very young child. So I remember the notebook. This is way better than the notebook, but I didn't think that
What
it had
was
been
in
out
the
that long.
notebook?
It was kind of like a Heritage Foundation deal where we would have lots of information on how they voted, what they were voting on. It was very different than this. This you can take, read it, and go, I totally haven't understood. Like the best thing we could do is hand these out the day before the election and make sure people have read this.
Well, people understand scores.
They do.
But back when y'all would give us a white paper, I'm like, oh my gosh, for 45
Yeah, but the white
minutes,
papers are so
45
good.
minutes later, yes, the
Wait,
nerdy
what's the
people,
white
but we
paper?
understand scores.
Deep dive into issues.
You learn all about the policy more than you would ever want.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm a big
when
picture person.
people came to you and you got texts that were less than thrilled with how they scored, how do you respond to them beyond, guys, hello, we were like waving the planes in saying this is coming.
Right.
How else do you respond?
At first, it's usually, I can't believe you gave him that score or said he wasn't conservative or she
It's your
wasn't
fault.
conservative. And I'm like, we didn't manipulate this. This is the score. You were given the answers to the test and we're just reflecting how you responded. And then I can't believe you scored the budgets. Again, if this was just
the budgets
good
are
old, if this
sacrosanct,
was
though.
just good old ordinary broke Alabama budgets, I think that you could make a case.
Right.
But again, that we just outspent the increase in our state spending. And remember, we're only talking about money they took from Alabamians. We're not talking about the $46 billion that came here from the feds, which 16 of that went directly to government, 16 billion. So if ever there was a time to cut, so a lot of camps around, they'll call me and say, hey, I'm talking about these grocery taxes. And I keep getting asked, well, where are you going to cut? Are you going to cut teachers? I'm like, you don't cut anything. You
Right.
stop the increase. They haven't even spent it yet. There's nobody to fire.
Right.
This is the perfect time. There's surplus money that hasn't even been allocated. So you don't cut anything. You just stop increasing spending. And so I think it was a really historic opportunity to look at and say, well, how big is too big? Because you'd say, well, where did they get all this excess money? Part of it we know is the gas tax increase. Part of it they decided they're going to start collecting all the internet sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's
remember
almost
that.
$500 million.
Was it really $500 million?
That was last year.
My chest
The
hurt.
corporate income tax. Remember when Trump did his tax plan?
Right.
It eliminated you being able to deduct your state income taxes, and so all these corporations didn't pay any additional tax. They just what they were sending to the Fed when the rate came down from 30 something to 20. all that went to the state. So the state had a windfall of $463 million. And so it wasn't because the economy was doing so great, although we're having a pretty good economy. It wasn't just the ordinary. They create a whole bunch of new streams of revenue that came in.
So now I know why y'all were getting rid of the grocery tax. Because that was the thing we used to say all the time. Because that would have been one of them I would have had to have asked about. Because I'm kind of leery. No, I'm really leery of getting rid of all the little ancillary taxes. Because eventually you have more and more people who don't pay any tax. And then all of those people get together and say, yeah, raise taxes on the people that are paying.
Right.
So I'm just giving a yellow flag warning before we get too far. But that's just those two. Online sales tax, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars.
Billions. And remember, the hardest part gut punch for this year to me was record budgeted for last year.
Right.
And $101.5 billion across both budgets came in above and beyond last year. So everything that was like, all the budget spent, everything, everybody got what they wanted, and we got an extra surplus. You could have paid for a grocery tax reduction for 3 years. You could have done school choice and given private school kids for 3 years and never missed it.
Never missed a beat.
And if you go back, and y'all should dig into what the $1.5 billion was spent on, I mean, we're advertising at the World Games. Southern Research is getting more money. I mean, every place you could imagine was just shoveled money. And I don't understand. And you said earlier, we put out policies that Alabamians would like, maybe, but really we just put out policies that reflected the values they said when they ran for office.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's a big distinction is we're not even talking about philosophical debates on what's appropriate tax rate or private schools this. We're having a philosophical debate about you said one thing and you're doing another.
Well, I told the ladies,
not politics.
we had
to
a
me.
caucus meeting.
That's not having anything to do with Republican, Democrat, anything. Do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
You run as a big Democrat, Dixiecrat, right? Big government, social conservative, then that would be fine. Then you should talk to the people and say, I don't think you should vote for somebody like that.
Right.
The people are voting for someone who espouses their values, but they're not doing it.
They're not getting
I think
it.
that's where you can have people with a higher level of frustration that goes beyond, we just disagree on tax rates.
Right.
That's not where we're
Well, no,
at.
I've told the ladies, and you need to be very, very, be leery of this. The time that fellow legislators were the angriest at me was when in a caucus meeting, I said, look, all I'm asking y'all to do is vote the way you said you would. I helped you with your mail pieces. I helped in your campaign. I know you said you were for this. I'm just asking you to vote with me because you said you were for it. And they were livid.
Yeah.
So when you try to explain it to them that way, I'm just telling you, it's not making you any brownie points.
But that's what they do. It's like what we're
so-
seeing with Roe v. Wade and this, most pro-life bill ever passed. Oh, wait a second. I didn't think it was actually going to pass.
I didn't think it would
or
ever
we were
become
going to have
law.
to actually follow through with it, and now everybody's backpedaling. And that's just what you see. It's been increasingly disappointing to watch Montgomery. And I've really only been following along for maybe 3 sessions. And every year I'm just like, oh my God, can it get any worse? And it does.
Wait till you're as old as we are following it. You'll have already
Not that.
Yeah, you're a
given it up
youngster.
by then.
still
Well, you're
youngster.
still young, and when it comes to politics. All right, so let me ask this question. I don't think anywhere, and this is a compliment to API, where in this scorecard does it say conservative versus non-conservative? Is there
What do you mean?
is there
It
a
doesn't.
column that says it just says top 10, worst 10?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it say conservative versus liberal?
Doesn't. It just ranks voting based on the issue sets here.
Right. So what legislators are saying when they call and complain or they're upset or they don't want their constituents to know, they're basically saying that the Alabama Policy Institute must be conservative Alabama values. And since they didn't score that
Keep
well,
talking.
because that's what I've been told. How could you rank him? He's not conservative. It doesn't say conservative in there. It just says,
This is what I want to show the people.
It just
doesn't
says-
say conservative. It doesn't say liberal. It says that the high scoring, it does say Republican. It does, okay, so the high
Well, it's
scoring
making a distinction
Republican.
between the Republicans.
right. And then there's Democrats over there.
Here we go. High scoring Republican, 90%. Highest scoring Democrat, 69%. Lowest scoring Republican, 31%. You have Democrats scoring higher than
saw
your
that.
Christian
The
conservative
average
Republicans.
Democrat scored
Who are nice and you go to church with. This isn't about nice. This is about policy.
This is
and keeping
why
your word.
the rest of
Keeping
America
your word.
looks
That's it.
at us and is like, what is wrong with y'all?
Right.
Y'all are supposed to be red of red of red, and we are so purple. Maybe, I mean, it's scary. So let's kind of walk through the Senate watch list and some of these. Man, number one.
So is the legislature more liberal or more purple than the people of the state? Is that a fair assessment?
Certainly, when it comes to fiscal policy, that's obvious.
Yeah. I mean, and you said it a minute ago, the people of Alabama, they vote for these candidates because these candidates say, I'm pro-God, pro-gun, pro-business, smaller government, personal responsibility, and they go to Montgomery and they're not those things. And so it's
The mail pieces
not
I'm
the
getting,
people's fault.
Yeah, the mail pieces I'm getting are way more specific now. I'm for less government, reducing spending,
right.
specifics that you can't even hide behind generalities. But again, it's not reflected in how they're voting. And obviously the money is, when you've got 100% of everybody voting for a budget, then everybody got what they wanted except us. That means the people are losing. They should only be able to vote a budget by a simple one-person majority, because that means all these other
It
people
was
did not get what they wanted.
Very rare that people voted no on the budgets.
Right.
Even in the old days. Very rare.
Really?
Right.
Very rare. Like you're a pariah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And they would say
these
things
are
like,
different.
well, you're not going to get something. Well, I don't remember asking for anything. Fine. Do it.
Yep. Yep. So it's one piece.
Crazy.
So Sam Gavan, who's one of my favorites. I really like him. He's super cool. But besides that,
So that was the highest ranking senator?
90%. And that was on a curve. So y'all ended up having to curve this just to
Y'all
give
scaled it?
anybody an A.
Curved
Yep.
everybody up a little bit.
Well, that was good in college.
Gerald Allen, number 2. Larry Stutz.
And I do think, Allison, it's worth looking at the lifetime score, because if you were to go back and pull 2021, it was mostly social policies. And so I think, given that this year was so heavily weighted towards the fiscal side, that the lifetime's a pretty good representation. If someone either, so you could get, like, well, wow, they're really fiscal conservative, which we don't have a whole lot of those, or they're really socially conservative. When you combine them, you can kind of see a good look of the lifetime.
So what is the minor income tax?
Isn't that a great question? What is it?
Where, Scott?
Minor income tax? I don't have my glasses on. House Bill 162.
I mean, is it?
Is we decided that little kids cutting grass needed to pay their taxes?
Or does it just mean a little tax?
It's just a small tax. I'm against big taxes, but not minor taxes.
Not minor
This is a
taxes.
good one.
Are we going to talk about the AEA at some point? Because
Please, can we?
I'm just getting, okay, so Arthur Orr, number 4 for this year. You get to Chris Elliott, number 5. Chris Elliott now this is a lifetime, since I don't know how long he's been in office, taking $85,000 from the AEA.
Unless you think we're making that up right here. $85,000. Okay.
So I take it he's against school choice.
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe he is.
And I think Will Ainsworth was one of the top ones too, with like a 80 something as well.
Yes.
Or 100 something. Okay, so
He may have been the $110,000 winner.
we need to go back and look at that. So then you go down. Okay, what I think is interesting when you get to number 17, you get through a few more Republicans, and then you get to Kirk Hatcher, District 26 Democrat, who has a higher rating this year than Clay Schofield, Greg Reed, Garland Gudger, Shay Shelnut. I mean, I don't know. I that just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get it's a weird year, but it's just kind of bizarre. I mean,
He voted for school choice, the charter, and AAA funding. He voted for the minor tax increase. And the reason why we say minor is because when the speaker was saying they passed historic
Giant tax cuts.
Tax cuts.
wasn't it like the $100 business tax?
So this is recent tax cuts. That's what Georgia did. there's Arizona, Iowa, Colorado, Florida. These aren't like hard red states, and this is our historic tax cut. This is not a joke. This is straight from the state. So that's historic.
Yeah.
But
Welcome to Ruby Red, Alabama.
Mr.
Well, historic's
Senator Hatcher.
relative. We don't do a lot of tax cutting.
Well, that's the problem. That's why everybody failed.
Wow.
And you know, the other thing that I will call it controversial because many have complained to me is that we also score the local bills.
And that's tough.
Well, here's what I say every time. If you don't like voting on the local bills, then freaking
Change the
fix
law.
it. You're the majority. I don't understand. Like every time I get told, well, you don't understand, we're everything's earmarked. Well, freaking fix it.
Yeah.
If you can't fix it, who
Hello,
can? You're
you're
the
in
majority.
charge.
So I
Right.
think people
Stop
hide,
enabling.
we hide behind it. And certain legislators that want to talk and understand this, it's like, well, it's leadership's fault. It's the governor's fault. And you're just like, it's all passing buck. So fix that. I think it's stupid that they vote on it. I don't know how you feel about it.
You don't
Scott. I
have to
think it's
vote on
stupid.
other people's local tax.
No, I'm just thinking
bills.
it's
I didn't
stupid
do
that
it.
it has to become
I didn't vote on our own
for
local
the
taxes.
legislature anyway. So I think let the local do what the local wants. Don't have to have oversight by the big state.
The bottom line is a group of legislators, and it doesn't have to be a big group because we had a group that caused some of these things to change. They can get together and say, okay, look, we're going to stick together. We're going to be our own little group, and we're not going to allow this stuff to happen.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's going to be slow and painful, and the leadership won't get what they want. And when the leadership comes to them and says, well, you're not going to get anything, you do have to be prepared to say, that's fine. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. Because what else are they going to attack
What
you with?
percentage of legislators will actually do that besides Andrew Sorrell?
And I don't know if Andrew has any, accomplices and allies, but we had, when I was in the House, there was a group of guys that would do that. When I was in the Senate, there
That
were
was
a
back
group,
in the good old days.
back in the old days. But the point is,
They could do it.
If you had a
That's
handful of
unbelievable.
guys or girls, you can do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I want to warn people about this one thing. If you want your legislator to really try to fix this stuff, you got to be for her, even if she can't bring money back to the school to fix their lunchroom. Fix your own lunchroom and let your legislator try to fix this, because a bunch of these people are not corrupted, they're not criminals, they're not compromised, but they do get compromised by the people back home who say, we really need an addition to the lunchroom, and you're the only one who can get it. And when they go and ask in that budget for some money, just even if it's $100,000, $50,000 for the budget, they almost have to sign in blood to be for it.
No matter
And so
what.
people back home, and my experience was the people back home, I had one of the reddest of the red districts in the state, period. And people would come and say, we need this. And the honest truth was most of them were old Democrats. But they had switched over, and now they were party this and chairman that and all this kind of stuff. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure put on some of these guys and girls to bring something back. And if you have to bring something back, those purse strings become very, very powerful. So some of it's our fault.
Right.
Because we want them to bring that back for the school, or we want them to bring this special thing back. And you got to get this road done. Why? Well, you got to get this road done. Why? Economic development. Does it go by your business? Oh, okay. That kind of stuff. There's always that pressure. And so we've got to free them up. We've got to elect them based on, we don't want you to do anything but fix this. I can't afford to keep paying the taxes. I can't afford to do
That's
whatever.
such a good point. I haven't thought about it from that perspective, but what I always say, like with local Alabama, that I started talking to legislators, blame it on us, blame it on the people. Go back and tell your caucus, I cannot vote for that because the people are telling me this is what they want. That's where the responsibility does fall on us too, to be vocal and to speak up for what we want, because scorecards come out, everybody gets all fired up. And then, as conservatives, we're usually just go back to our job, raising our family, doing what we do, and we kind of forget. And it's why we are where we are. So,
Yeah, that's why we did this, is because they no longer could say that, because they'd say, well, old adage when I was in D.C., don't do anything that gets you on the front page of the Washington Post. I mean, that was 20 years ago when I first went there. So the legislature, somebody come to him and say, and it was like, that's not showing up in the paper. It's not showing up anywhere. We'll actually, if you do this, we'll actually get a really great op-ed put out. They'll tell everybody you're a great conservative. So that's where it's completely broken down, that there is no accountability
Yeah.
in that area.
And I also think that we need to adjust our lens and our definition of what success means when you can't get that lunchroom edition. So adjusting the focus to, like you always said, try to stop some of the foolishness from happening, but also know that they're not successful based on whether or not they got you that new wing of the school
Right.
that you may or may not use. But then here's something that the legislators can do is when you go for a vote and you say, okay, I'll go back and ask for that, get on your iPhone and record, I just asked for this, like you guys asked me to. And they said no.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So at least people know, that transparency is happening, that they're being heard, the request is being made, whatever it may be. But what would happen if that were to happen? If people just pulled out their phone every time that they tried to do the right thing and made a recording of it, there's accountability right there on all ends.
One of the things that helped me a lot back in the old days, thank you, the old
so
days,
old.
I know, was that I would go to a meeting, town hall meeting, whatever, and there would always be these 2 or 3 things that people would be like, you got to kill this, you got to kill this, you need to be against this, you need to be against this. And then the group would say, but we want this. Can you bring us? I said, okay, fine. Which one of those do you want me to trade? Because when I go with your request, they're going to say, Senator, I need you to be for this bill. If you're for this bill, then we can probably work on your needs at the school. So which one do you want me to trade that for? And they're like, we don't want you to trade it. I'm like, okay, I'm with you. That's my policy. I'm not trading either.
That's indicative of government in general. Anytime we ask government to give us something, care for us, we by nature lose freedom in that.
Right.
And so I think one thing, at least for me, people in Alabama, if they're for less government, then they didn't expect less from government. Quit asking government to solve all solutions. If you look at Governor Ivey's press conferences, every single press conference is about, here's how she as head of government is going to solve a problem of ours, either through giving out some of our money to somebody or creating a new program. So that, to me, that's where you have to say we need to take care of our own issues. But number 2 is, I would argue, in the way I see the legislature's role strictly is to keep government off of me, to protect my liberties from government, not horse trade my rights, not get me money. It's literally so that we all can be in our communities, raising our families, creating jobs, working, right, in our churches. And you don't have to worry about the government getting you, because my elected representative is there shielding me, fighting the beast on my behalf.
Right.
But I don't think that your average legislator sees that as their role. And you're right. Part of it is because people come to them, I'd argue probably not conservatives, and then want them to get something from government. And once you make the trade, all bets are off.
Yeah, then you're locked in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed.
So we only have like 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So we're going to go through the House real quick. So at the bottom of the Senate, though, you've got David Sessions as number 34.
I thought he was a Republican.
He is. And then number 35 is Priscilla Dunn, Democrat.
And do look, Allison, look at all the gray space. You see, those are all keep vote bills that they never had the opportunity to vote on, which are all of our really great bills. So that's what
And I put
killed
that on
it
our
this
leadership,
year.
our conservative Republican leadership that wouldn't bring up. I mean, the anti-rioting bill was there. The emergency powers, the state. Well, no,
Sorry,
the
Senate.
state health. Oh, there was one.
Oh yeah,
On the House
none
side.
of the balancing of powers came about. So everybody that's complaining about, they're ticked about essential and non-essential, and they're ticked about mask and vaccine mandates. All of them had the opportunity to fix that.
And
Yeah.
they did
All
not.
of them could have stopped it. So we're all vulnerable to the exact same thing happening when, China or whoever creates another pandemic.
Does anyone
Because it didn't
remember?
fix it.
No.
Do y'all remember how many pieces of legislation did the Senate pass? How many pieces did the House pass? It had to be
Thousands.
hundreds.
Thousands.
So the point is, when they pass hundreds of pieces of legislation and they have this handful that they think skewed their grade, they could have passed these.
Yeah, they could have.
They could have voted on these. They absolutely could have.
Yep.
Well, forget the grade. Like, they spent time making sure we could buy beer from a food truck instead of passing and getting some of these really good bills, conservative issues on the floor. So for the House, we have highest scoring Republican Andrew Sorrell at 90%, lowest Jones Jr. What's his first name?
Mike.
Highest Democrat, 78%. Okay, let me go back. Jones Jr., 43%. And the lowest Democrat in the House was 55%, and Jones was 43. I mean,
So the lowest person in the House was a Republican?
Yeah.
Wow.
Y'all.
I mean,
So
And this is a great page if y'all ever talk about it again on 16, why are budgets key votes? This hits a lot of the talking points that I was unpacking
that's
earlier.
outstanding.
Now, where can people out there watching this podcast, where can they get this information? Where do they go to find this scorecard and the
Yep, alabamapolicy.org.
alabamapolicy.org?
all out there.
Yep.
So Andrew Sorrell, shout out to Arnold Mooney, who's my representative. Mike Holmes, number 4, Charlotte Meadows, which, her redistricting, she took a hit.
Were they
see
trying
what
to get rid
happens
of her?
there. I don't know. I don't know why. What was
If
that?
her district changed a tremendous amount, I'm
Yeah.
not saying, I don't know for sure, but it would seem like
there is upheaval.
somebody wanted her
Yeah.
to go home.
So Barbara Drummond, Democrat, number 5. Kenneth Pascal, number 6.
Hey, rock star.
Yeah, newbie, doing well. Tommy Haynes, but it's interesting. The top 3 out of the top 13, 3 out of the top 13 are Democrats.
Isn't that fascinating?
A lot of it was the anti-protest bill, which was, if y'all haven't talked about it before, that's a pretty wild bill.
Yeah,
the
we need to
Democrats
touch on
voted
that if we have
against
time.
that. I think it was a political deal.
Yeah. Well, because it really was a bad bill.
I thought it was horrific.
Yeah.
But every Republican in the House voted for it.
It was
My
awful.
understanding it was a horse trade vote in order to be able to vote for constitutional carry to placate the Sheriff's Association. That's my understanding. I
It
don't know if
basically
it's true.
says the anti-rioting bill, which sounds good, says that if there are 5 or more people standing on a sidewalk that aren't even doing anything illegal, but look suspicious, you can deem them a riot, call the police, whatever. I mean,
You spend a minimum of 24 hours in jail,
yeah.
and it's all the law enforcement officers' interpretation of your potential for intent and violence.
That's Germany
it-
stuff.
So
this
you could be
protesting in a pro-life.
100%. That's what I mean. But it was all geared towards BLM in Birmingham, which the problem in Birmingham is the mayor just didn't enforce the law and let them tear everybody's business
The
up.
laws are there.
So
Right.
why does big state now need to? Because I'll end up in jail under this bill. So I could tell everybody I will end up in jail under this bill.
Well, if we
keep
grab
going.
Brian and go hang out on the sidewalk,
We'll end up
we
in
could
jail.
all go down.
Now, the old bill used to be 2 people could be a demonstration, and that was one of the racist things that was passed in the old days.
this is a demonstration. This is a
So,
violent
so
riot.
this one just expands, changes from 2 to 5, but then leaves it totally.
Good grief.
This is 1984. You just went for an
Yeah.
intent crime.
The eyes have hills. They're watching you.
And it wasn't. Remember, it's 5 or more, so you could be standing over there, and there could be a crowd gathering. Some guy throws a punch. So you're going
You're going with 'em.
minimum of 24 hours in jail, and if you're convicted, minimum of 36 months in prison. This was heinous, in my opinion.
So no thought to how this would end up? I mean, when they just said, okay, we're going to vote for this?
Oh, and like the Republican, they all thought it was, most of them thought it was a great bill.
They
It's
didn't
bizarre.
really understand it. When you unpacked the ramifications,
That's their
they would all
job
say,
to
"Ah, it's bad,"
understand
but
it.
it
Like-
came kind of quick, and they would say leadership threw it on them last minute, and it was shuffled. And some of them trust leadership and trust their
Yeah, don't.
people wouldn't put them in that spot. But this one was egregious.
So,
It must be slow
I had no
learners.
idea. I
it
did not
was so
know
bad.
it was awful.
so Tim Wadsworth, number 14, Republican. I just wanted to point out he's taken $117,000 from the AEA.
Okay, wait a second.
They also scored the gas tax vote, or not scored, but
Again, 117,000. And this is still something that the Republican Party highly discourages. I can't quite figure out where the disconnect is coming in. Anyway, going
So
through.
the gas tax vote is on here. So for all of you people listening out at home, if you go and check out the scorecard, alabamapolicy.org, find it. You can find out if your legislator voted for the gas tax. And I would advise people to do that while you're waiting on the gas pump to fill up your car. Just get on your phone, see who voted for the gas tax. It's a perfect time. You don't have anything to do while the it's just going anyway. It'll be great.
and it's not actually a part of any score because this started past, but this just shows you who did and who didn't, but it's
Yeah.
not incorporated in the score.
Well, and I think what in regards specifically to AEA and the money that we just touched on, I love having this in my hand that you can look and see who received what. Because for so long you didn't really know, or you're a regular person like me and you're like, how do you find out exactly how they got all that money? Here it is. There is no hiding. That's the other piece that I think might be my favorite about this, because you can see with your own eyes how lobbying affects your family. This like the gas tax and the grocery tax that wasn't eliminated, this hits close to home.
So the one I want to talk about that is just bizarre is Jim Carnes, who is,
What number is he?
he's number 89.
89.
He scored a 59.1.
Okay.
Okay, how did that happen? Let's
He
talk,
voted wrong
For all
and
the budgets?
Right. He voted for wrong and right. Yes.
because to me he's one that I think about that is like a champion for conservative, I guess socially conservative things. And that's where, this just is what it is, and you all scored the way you scored. I will say everything is nuanced. And so to always view these things through that. And there are a lot of other national scorecards. I'm kind of curious how this, like with CPAC or Club for Growth, nationally, how do these compare? How does the API compare? They kind of
Club for Growth hasn't released one yet. Theirs was scathing compared to ours when they released it the first time.
so we'll look for that when it comes back.
But yeah, it's right there. Voted for that riot bill and for the two budgets, and
Yeah.
the only thing he voted for was the minor income tax bill and the AAA funding. But he wasn't given even the opportunity to vote for the charter school bill,
Yeah.
patient's choice.
But nobody was given the opportunity.
That's what I'm saying.
And so it's really even playing field.
Well, it's
even.
an even playing field, and it's like, and Jim's one of my good friends, and I do consider him one of the most conservative members. Again, though, this doesn't say conservative or not conservative. It says these were the things we said we would be watching.
Yeah.
And y'all went and voted for them. So Jim voted this way, and he gets this score. That's the thing is that. And it's also like having a class that has a midterm and a final. So there's two tests.
Yeah.
Compared to a class that has a test every week and you have 10 chances to score. Well, they only had a midterm and a final, basically, because the leadership decided they couldn't vote on all these other things.
That's correct.
So your score can only be based on what the legislators' leadership decided they would get scored
Right.
on. So that's what
And
they
so
did.
I hope this
They should really be
motivates-
blaming the leadership more than they should blame API, in my opinion.
That's where I hope it motivates those to say, I would have voted yes on all these bills and would have had a 92.
Right.
To be more assertive and aggressive in Montgomery to fight for these good things that everybody agrees. I mean, not a single person, legislator in this entire sheet, called and said, I don't think you should have included all this gray space on here. Like they were all okay with the grade, but we failed to get these to votes. So more has to be done to make
And I
these
guess
good
you would
things
say,
happen.
for myself, I would be fine with a legislator saying, you know what, I'm probably going to vote for the budget, but leadership, you got to give me these two. You got to give me these 3 votes because they're going to score these, and I'm going to vote yes on those. If you want me on the budget, give me these. Give me school choice. Give me so-and-so.
Yeah, I'll take the budget hit for you, but we've got to get
That would be an improvement.
How to Get an A
Yeah.
by Scott Beeson.
work
Yes.
the system.
give
I
me
mean,
a
101
chance.
for legislators.
Right, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that true though? Give me a chance.
absolutely.
Let me do some of these.
Well, and here's the thing that Allison's group is so good at and that we're trying to tell people is we've got your back.
Yeah.
We want you to vote
We really
with
are
us.
for you.
Right.
We are for you, but we're not coming
Right.
against you. We're just asking you why.
Right.
Because you can't hide. But if you're with us and you're for us, we've got your back every time.
Well, it goes
But
back-
also use the power of social media, though, when you do go vote and when you are up and you're having conversations.
know what you're
Let
doing.
people know, let people in on what those, conference room conversations are like. Obviously, not giving away private information, but be transparent. I want you to be
Well,
transparent.
let people know. Hey, we just found out we're not going to vote on school choice.
Yes.
'Cause
Can you
leadership
imagine
says-
what would happen?
Yeah, let people kind of know those things, and it would help. Because I really would rather hear that than see a picture of my legislator at the pancake breakfast. I really I hate that.
And you touched on that about
Because
the
everybody's
rules.
happy at the pancake breakfast. You know what I'm saying?
Because they're sugared up, of course.
Yes. So, I mean, just give me something that's, and some of these guys that didn't score very well, they're my friends. I support them. People were asking me about some of these districts in the last couple of days. And I said, hey, you got to be for him. He's conservative. He absolutely is. But it really does come down to these were the only test. Mm-hmm. And not getting these other things up for votes, that's legislators' fault.
But that's why we send you to exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It is very easy.
Like
Horse trading
where-
is real. And if you say, look, I can help you with this, but you got to help me with that, there's nothing really wrong with that.
Yeah.
People get
well,
all
as long as
touchy
you don't
about
compromise
it.
on like the
exactly.
essentials and the
Right.
bedrocks of conservatism.
That's right.
And, yes.
Absolutely.
But that's what usually happens.
Yeah.
So-
That's because the people who understand it are better at it usually, and they take advantage of
But
folks.
the budgets still matter because if government has
Right.
Yes.
more money than you do,
Right.
you're subservient to government.
Right.
They should
That's
only
where we're
have
headed.
the minimal amount of money is necessary.
Correct.
So all other freedoms we keep horse trading are totally useless when they just decide, it's enough's enough. We
That's
get all
right.
the money, we'll take them. So that's why we keep having to come back to the money is essential to all our other freedoms out there. If we get ESAs and that changes the whole ball game of AEA, what? Who cares? Everybody's got their money. They go to school of their choice. Like we could totally take the power back if we take our money back.
Right.
That's the distinctive difference. So I don't want to. Granted, they would have done better.
No,
than
I
these,
agree.
but
I agree. I'm just
budgets
explaining how you
really,
end
really
up.
matter.
Right.
Again, we're not in a scenario where they're having the bottom of the barrel and we're beating people to death for following their constitutional obligation to pass a budget. We're just saying, and all we said was, we didn't even say cut. This no vote was don't make it bigger than last year's historic budget. So it wasn't that they voted for budgets. It was we asked for a level funding budget because there was no justification for any increase in spending.
Right.
Yes, there's inflation, but we're all experiencing inflation and government's been getting raises after raises anyway. I mean, it's their second year raises for all government employees. Private sector didn't necessarily get that. So I think that is critical to focus on as you guys are going forward because that really at the end of the day is the biggest thing that matters, the money.
I just had a thought for another podcast. Maybe if you don't hate us for having you on, you'll come back and it would be a great discussion about what is the role of government. I think we've lost perspective on exactly what government, like why it's a God ordained institution. Why do we have it? What is its role? We're so conditioned to think it is to provide my child with public school. Well, no, it wasn't originally like that.
Right.
And we just, it's to have the bus that picks up my kid every morning. Nope. So that would be actually a great discussion to just go back to the basics of what is the role of government. Because I think our minds are kind of warped on that
And maybe
one.
it made sense when everybody was on the same page, but this is what happened when we do centralization. Once we centralize, which we've done with public education, the bad man always knows where to go, infiltrates, and then we're all wrecked.
Yep.
Everything
right.
should be
We're at their mercy.
decentralized. That's why conservatives believe family unit first, and then smaller government here, and then you branch up. You want decentralization so that tyranny can't reign. That's how tyranny reigns. Tyranny can't take over a whole bunch of decentralized units. So we're at a place now that government, in my opinion, has become corrupted. Look at what they're teaching in public schools. API is working on looking at a report of the bans that DeSantis did for all these textbooks that have all this poison in them.
Right.
We just did an overlay. We've got just as many being taught in our public schools here, just as many. So that's infiltrated. So now we've got to rip back and get back and have our own options on
We've
this.
got to talk about
Yeah,
that.
we do.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Maybe you could be our fourth host.
No, you don't want me here. You probably ain't gonna have me back. So
I
I'll
do.
talk to
Hey,
you so
I know
need
you
some
got to
help.
go, but just
I'm outnumbered.
since I called out the bottom of the Senate, I'm going to call out the bottom of
Okay.
the House.
Oh, yes, please.
That would be our Speaker, Matt McCutcheon, came in 96, scored a 56. Will Dismukes, 2 Democrats in the bottom. And then below Rod Scott, who's a Democrat, number 99, is Victor Gaston and Mike Jones Jr. at a 42.6. So it's just weird. I don't know what next year brings. Actually, next Tuesday. We'll see what next Tuesday brings.
Can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, we'll be back here next
about it.
Wednesday.
To see what happens in
The
The
Talk about
postmortem.
And we didn't even do our show on commercials.
It's too late.
We'll have to
I'm
t-
so over the
yeah.
commercials. We might
We're just glad they're going to be over.
Yeah. But we could make one up.
Make a commercial.
Yeah.
We know
next
what to
week.
do.
We do know what to do.
In Alabama. Caleb's going to come back for that one. You're official
Caleb,
now.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the work
Thank
y'all
you
do at
very
API
much.
and for coming by and explaining the scorecard. Ladies, any last
Caleb, do you have any last
No, thank you for having
say
me.
your piece?
I really appreciate it. Grateful.
good deal? Anything?
Nope.
You finished? Are you
Surprisingly, I'm done.
sure? You're right.
Are you
Surprisingly.
shocked?
I am. You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks for watching the program. We hope you will go to, where's all the places? 1819news.com.
YouTube.
Check it out. YouTube. I missed that one earlier. Spotify.
Spotify, Podbean,
Apple.
Gab.
Give us a good rating.
5 stars.
5
Oh,
stars.
and
Thumbs
share.
up.
Share us with your friends and
And
family.
you know what? Sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah, sign up
That
for
would be very
1819
important. Sign
newsletter.
up for 1819's newsletter. It comes every morning, right? It's like the morning edition.
The morning edition.
It's like the old school paper at your doorstep.
It's what you need
Subject.
to get through your day.
And train your dog to bring it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, you just train your
You have
finger.
to do it that way?
You just
You get your dog
click.
to do it?
Just like that.
No?
yeah.
So anyway, thanks for
Done.
being with us. We'll see y'all again next time.